Even when Lorraine said it, I didn't recoil. The first surprise was that, after my hospital stay, the sluggish trek from bed to bathroom, and the excruciating pain that left me feeling as though I was still being operated on, you would think that I would have reacted in some way. However, I simply stood there grinning politely and nodding like a weary waiter accepting the final order from an impolite table. Her voice sounded like she owned the airways as she yelled, "Stop being dramatic and cook," across Belle's phone speaker. My wife, on the other hand, said nothing to support me. She simply gave me this uninteresting little look as like everything was normal, as if inviting a man who had recently had abdominal sutures to serve Christmas dinner made sense. Under my sweater, the surgical bandages were still in place. I still hadn't been able to sleep through the night without waking up in a cold sweat. However, something inside of me shattered as I smiled and added, "Of course, calm, cheerful, too cheerful." It wasn't noisy. Not that it was angry. It simply felt definitive. Like when you know you won't ever open a door again when it silently closes behind you. I heard the words and, as usual, felt their weight fall on my back. And as though nothing had happened, I grinned. However, everything had inside. I could hardly make instant noodles, and the smell of the broth filled the kitchen. Long periods of standing caused my hands to shake. Yes, the cut was healing, but the inside was ripped. I continued to nod. I did agree, though. It was always that way with them. No matter how financially, emotionally, or physically shattered I was, it made no difference. I was supposed to carry it on my back while they made distant judgments, whether it was a holiday, there were guests arriving, or Lorraine thought there was a family custom to follow. Belle was unable to cook, was under too much stress, or had to take care of the decor. And by decor they meant looking through Pinterest for inspiration while I peeled potatoes under my shirt, my sutures still sore. I can recall when this pattern began. You're a married person. I was ill with the flu.
Actual flu.
2 chills. Fever. The kind that makes it impossible to stand up straight. Nevertheless, as Delilah was filming a tour of my kitchen with her vlog and Griffin was watching football, I found myself making gravy. "So rustic," she remarked, oblivious to my trembling. Or perhaps she did. She might have enjoyed it. 2 weeks prior to Christmas the following year, I was involved in an automobile accident. Thank God, nothing too serious. But once more, I was the one up at 5 in the morning, with my shoulder in a sling and on pain medication. While everyone else slept in, I was basting a turkey. According to Lorraine, it was therapeutic food. Who is being healed? And now, 2 weeks after my surgery, the demand was still evident, and my insides were still sewn like a tattered shirt. Schmoiling, cooking, hosting. When the call was over, I headed upstairs. Said nothing to Belle. She didn't inquire about my well-being. Didn't look up from her computer. I could not believe it when she simply sighed and added, "At least Mom's taking care of the decorations this time." Could hardly comprehend her. I would have walked through fire for her once because I loved her that much. I was beginning to understand, though, that the fire had always belonged to her. The only thing burning in there was myself. I sat on the edge of our bed and gradually lifted my sweatshirt to show the thick, damp gauze that was taped to my tummy along the edges. The movement alone caused the discomfort to escalate. I inhaled through it. I was accustomed to enduring discomfort, accustomed to creating room for it. However, I was beginning to believe that perhaps the only aspect of me they ever really noticed was the agony. To utilize, not to respect. To reduce my comfort in order to increase theirs. My phone broke. Delilah's daughter Mara had sent the note. A Christmas tree meme with the message, "Uncle Jonas's level of energy this year. Teenagers can be cruel," was followed by a laughing emoji, but she wasn't taught this fact overnight. I didn't respond. Rather, I sat there and listened to the quiet of our home, the refrigerator's hum, Belle's nail drill's delicate buzz in the bathroom, and the small reminders that life goes on even if you're still lying in the ruins. And I came to a realization. They believed that I would never refuse. Not Belle, her mother, her conceited brother or sister on social media, or even the spoiled niece who believed that life was a play. And I was sweeping it as the janitor, the yes man, the houseboy, the cook, the errand runner, the silent husband who grinned in the family Christmas pictures with a plate of food in one hand and bitterness so deep it appeared to be contentment. I've been the reliable one for far too long. I was still that man they believed. However, when Lorraine addressed me as though I were a servant, something changed. When my spouse failed to stand up for me. When suffering was no longer a concern but rather a casual desire. My grin was no longer an act of goodwill. That was the end of it. I didn't get much sleep that night. My stomach pounded with the anguish like a heartbeat. However, I wasn't upset. I wasn't depressed. I had a plan. Not angry. Not even with resentment. Just some clarity. When you eventually stop pleading to be seen, you have a certain clarity. When you realize that the only way to be appreciated is to go and let them see what's lacking. I didn't want to yell. I had no intention of arguing. They spoke that language. Mine would be as exact, surgical, and silent as the way my surgeon had sutured me. It hurts, but it's necessary. I would grant them the vacation they requested, but not in the manner they had anticipated. And there wouldn't be a fit when it happened. There would be an accounting. I stood in the kitchen the following morning, looking at a cup of tea that I was unable to drink. My hand shook excessively, and my sutures hurt from the heat bouncing off the ceramic. I tried to breathe through my sweater by gently pressing my palm against the bandages underneath it. The air didn't smell of breakfast. There was a dense, unsettling calm like the prelude to a storm, with no clinking of pots and pans. Belle entered, her newly manicured nails tapping gently across the screen as she browsed through her phone as usual. She didn't raise her head. They'll all be here for Christmas, according to Mom. All you have to do is cook. Decorations will be handled by her. She spoke as though she were providing me with a weather report. Just facts, nothing sentimental or considerate. Expected and cold. I took a while to respond. I merely stared at her while taking a sip of air from the rim of my cup. Glance closely. I used to commit her face to memory at one point. When she was thrilled, her nose would twitch. When she was going to chuckle, her lips curved. All I could see now was distance. Emotional rather than physical. A wall so thick that not even the daily pain I carried could penetrate it. I was peering inside when she saw me. "What?" she inquired, irritated. "It's just a dinner, Jonas. You've done it a million times. Don't act like it's a war." A war? That was rich coming from someone who never stepped into the kitchen unless it was to take a selfie beside the food. I began to speak, perhaps to remind her that I was still unable to stand up straight without experiencing excruciating agony in my side. I closed it after that, though. Why would it matter? The truth was not what she wanted. She desired the custom, and I was that tradition. No matter how broken I was, I remained crouched over the stove, quiet and amiable. In our household, that was my responsibility. The partner was not me. In her family's performance, I was the background figure, the cook, and the purveyor of holiday ambience. I cautiously slid myself onto the cushions as I padded back to the couch. I had the impression that someone was penetrating my internal organs with a spoon. I clenched my teeth, winced, and waited for the sickness to subside. There was my pain medication on the coffee table. I decided not to take one after staring at them for a while. Not quite yet. I wanted to remain alert. Pain had become my inspiration and reminder. I sat with my journal later that afternoon. I stopped writing poetry and journal entries. Simple, impersonal lists were what I wrote. I recorded the times I cooked when I was ill on one sheet. Flu year 2 Christmas. 4th year Thanksgiving injured wrist. Despite food poisoning, lamb was nonetheless prepared for Easter in year 5. I lost my job the week of Belle's birthday. Griffin's engagement celebration. The day I received the results of my biopsy. Every post evoked memories I had long suppressed. As I sat on a stool with a garbage can by me in case I had to throw up, I recalled Belle giving me a pan. Lorraine once said, "You men are so dramatic with illness," as I recalled. I could hardly stand at the time. I had agreed that it was the worst part. I had persevered and smiled because I wanted to be loved, accepted, and valued. However, it was never sufficient. I was never the focus. I flipped the page. One more list. Things they said is the title of this one. Jonas consistently produces the greatest stuffing. We could care less if he's exhausted. It's only fair that you take care of the food because you're not working anyhow. You're at least helpful in the kitchen. The next time, can't Belle just employ someone? Why don't you work as a chef? For us, you're already doing it. Every sentence was like a cut in the paper. Small, sharp, and unnoticed by me except by those who said them. Over time, those cuts accumulated and became more than just pain. They evolved into comprehension. I wasn't considered family by them. They viewed me as a function. Around nightfall, Belle passed by one more while still using her phone. She looked at me as if I were a piece of furniture. Have you begun creating the menu yet? This year, according to Mom, she wants steak tenderloin. She no longer eats turkey. Then she stopped. To let you know, Delilah is now gluten-free. I blinked carefully, as if my mind required more time to comprehend the ridiculousness. Tenderloin of beef. Gluten-free holiday happiness. In the meantime, I hadn't even had the strength to shower properly without sagging like an old man against the wall. It had been 2 weeks since I had tasted actual food. I was still getting by on broth and yogurt. And yet, like an impolite present, the expectations had come true on time. I gave another nod, as I always did. However, the area where my resentment once resided has become chilly. Not irate, just plain. I recognized every one of them for who they were. And I at last realized that I was more than what they had portrayed me to be. That evening I scrolled through emails. I looked up terms like Jonas, Christmas, menu, dinner, and assistance. Years' worth of requests and grievances were discovered. There were times when I was told not to ruin the pies this time, to make extra for Mara, or to keep in mind Lorraine dislikes onions. A few were SMS messages. Voice notes were among them. They are all stored in folders and are never removed. Proof, I reasoned, of a pattern rather than a crime. I hobbled back into the kitchen the following morning and opened the cabinet containing the cookbooks. I gazed at the headings. A few were presents. The majority were gifts from Lorraine. She once remarked that if a man is going to be lousy anywhere else, he better at least be able to cook. I recalled giggling at the time. Now it wasn't humorous. Belle went by once more. You wake up early. Excellent. You can begin. Perhaps create a spreadsheet or something similar. Spreadsheets appeal to you. Her voice was easy and thoughtless with no edge or awareness, just directions. I gave a final nod, not because I agreed but because I was determined. I went to my desk, retrieved Noelle's contact information, and opened my laptop. The entire picture was only known to Noelle. Having hosted a dinner where Lorraine brought her own seasoning blend because she didn't trust my palate, he had witnessed my tears. When Belle was at a wine tasting with Delilah and I was too unwell to drive, he was the one who brought me soup. The second ring caught his attention. You all right? He asked, and I hesitated, Jonas. I then explained to him the call, the request, and the expectation that he would cook once more. Even though I was still in agony and hadn't eaten anything substantial in days, I was still expected to make a feast for people who had never expressed gratitude to me without showing signs of sarcasm. He didn't say anything. Then his tone became piercing. They've used your kindness like a doormat, he stated. After that call with Noelle, I felt as though something had finally clicked into place. Let's flip the rug on them. I didn't laugh, but I did feel something shift. We were no longer talking about just dinner. We were talking about finally serving them what they truly deserved, and I was ready. I couldn't tell if it was bravery or fatigue, but it let me breathe more steadily. Sitting in my chair, I gazed at the little light filtering through the drapes. I also didn't feel like I had to change who I was to fit into the life they wanted me to lead for the first time in years. Once more my phone buzzed. I let it ring. Lorraine. Delilah a minute later. I also disregarded that. Then one of Mara's voice notes. I knew it wouldn't deliver anything helpful, so I pushed play already. Hello C. Just a friendly reminder to avoid making your drab cranberry sauce this year. Like you are the only one who eats it. Make that lemon garlic version that she saw on TikTok, Mom suggests. I gazed at the phone for a long time before hitting delete. Don't mess it up. Okay, love you, I guess. The words, don't mess it up, rang like a drop dish in my mind. No, how are you feeling? No, can we help? Just orders, as if I were a man still recovering from surgery, not the family's unpaid personal chef recuperating from a Han gale. All day long, the messages continued to arrive. A screenshot of a table arrangement was supplied by Lorraine. Before we go there, make sure this is prepared. This time, no excuses. A second message followed. Instead of using the cheap silver chargers you used last year, use the gold ones. So cheesy. I rubbed my temples and closed my eyes. It wasn't a reminder. They were demands disguised as insults. This was always the case. This deterioration is gradual. At first it felt aggressive but never cruel. Then came the two deeply hurtful jokes. The moment Lorraine informed a guest that he cooks since that's all he's good at. Or the time Griffin smiled and called me kitchen kin in front of a large crowd.
Belle Chocolde.
Then I recall because I had a tightening of my heart at that very instant. She wasn't sharing my laughter. She was making fun of me. Those recollections began piling up like trash in a forgotten room. Pretending that each one was merely a misunderstanding, I continued to try to clear them away. However, it wasn't. It was a story, a pattern. One in which I was only the helper and never the husband. And I continued to cook year after year. I recalled throwing my back out on one Thanksgiving. Lorraine claimed that turkey was too American, so even though I could hardly bend over, I grilled 3 chickens. I recall pretending to smile as Griffin threw a bread roll at me from the other side of the room and said, "You missed a spot." As I was perspiring through my shirt and gulping down pills like candy. Our air conditioner malfunctioned once more during a heat wave. It was hot in the kitchen, and I felt dehydrated and lightheaded. I didn't say anything that day either, but I was standing over a boiling pot when Delilah entered, looked around and said, "Wow, no wine. Jonas, are you even trying this year?" Because that's what I was taught to do in this household. I simply served the dinner. However, the training came to an end this year. I got up cautiously and made my way to my bookshelves after the last round of messages. There was a little wooden box on the top shelf. When it had been years since I opened, it contained old pictures, letters, and a few mementos from before I knew Belle and before I became enmeshed in her family's customs. Prior to it, their demands and schedules dominated my life. I was drawn to one picture. Noelle, who is 10 years younger than me, and I are standing next to my food truck, the Moving Fork. I used to dream of that truck. I put all of my money aside for it. Weekends were spent painting it, fine-tuning it, and cultivating a small but devoted fan base. Belle then advised me to put that idea behind and concentrate on being a serious man. "I don't want to marry someone who chases fairs and farmers markets," she remarked. I sold it because she needed stability. I paid a down payment on this house with the money. I now lived like a stranger in that one. The one in which my wife distributed demands like Christmas candy while I quietly mended. After looking at my old smile in the picture, I finally realized why this year had to be different. Once more my phone buzzed. It was a video call this time. Lorraine. She called me back right away after I left it on voicemail. So I replied. The screen was filled with her face, wearing a sequin robe with hair and hot rollers. "Where are you on the ham, Jonas? Never again tell me you're leaving at the last minute. Christmas Eve is Delilah and Griffin's arrival. Thus the cuisine must be flawless. No shortcuts. To the family you owe it." I remained silent. She gazed, perplexed by the quiet. I angled the phone a little and showed her the tray of unopened prescription medications. "Well, are you listening?" I asked. I still had my medication bottles arranged by the window. I then hung up the phone. No explanation, no message. We began preparing that evening when Noelle texted me a minute later asking, "We flipping the rug now?" I replied, "Rug, table, whole damn floor." The shrewd one was always Noelle. When he did speak, everything he said was impactful. So we listed all the local restaurants that delivered and he said, "If they expect a feast, give them one, just not the one they think they're getting." After that, we created aliases, fictitious names, and legitimate addresses, and we began using Belle's credit card to make prepaid purchases. She wouldn't be aware. She bragged about having flawless credit like it was a medal, rarely examined charges, and simply paid the bill. We planned delivery timings one by one. On Christmas Day, a variety of cuisines arrived within a 10-minute interval. Gourmet burgers, vegan sushi, Thai, Ethiopian, and Greek cuisine, each labeled for a different family member. After that, I began to collect everything else. Text messages that made fun of my cooking or treated me like a hotel concierge, voicemails, screenshots, and old pictures of me standing over burners with ice packs on my back. I put them in a manila folder after printing them. They had composed a tale for me, with each sheet representing a chapter. Simply put, they were unaware that I was going to write the conclusion. One year Lorraine gave me an old holiday card which I discovered. It was read by our beloved Jonas, the family cook. This year, don't let us down. When I read that, I used to cry. I believed it meant I mattered, not because it was cruel. But now my retaliation would be headlined with that line. I got everything prepared before night's end. A proof folder. A chaotic delivery timetable. A strategy that relied solely on facts and receipts rather than violence or yelling. When the time came, they would all be seated around my immaculately prepared table, their plates empty and their mouths full of uncertainty, and they would finally receive what they were due. Not the meal, but the truth. Breaking through the slats, the morning sun hung languidly in the sky. I was sitting at the kitchen table, looking out into the dining room and drinking a weak cup of tea. It was immaculate. All surfaces shone. Like submissive troops waiting for commands, the seats were carefully nestled under the table. This year, however, there would be no elaborate dinner. Don't bake the ham in the oven. No pots that bubble. No never-ending procession of food presented as sacrifices to a family that had never really seen me. I wasn't making dinner this time. I was getting the proof ready. With his pickup vehicle thundering into the driveway, Noel arrived in the middle of the morning. Despite being 5 years older than me, he looked half my age as he walked out with a bag of goods draped over his shoulder and a smile on his face. He had a portable printer for the finishing touches, a stack of menus and takeout receipts with him. "Are you prepared?" At my side, where the stitches were hidden beneath layers of gauze and embarrassment, every movement still caused excruciating pain. I ought to have been sleeping. I ought to have received attention. Rather, I was going to present a feast of receipts and penalties. Noel pulled out a big stack of restaurant flyers and dropped the bag on the counter. He chuckled as he quoted, "I even got vegan options for Mara's new lifestyle," using air fingers. "And have a look at this." I chuckled quietly. Every meal is prepaid under each of their names with instructions for extra packaging. Thai, Ethiopian, Greek, Indian burgers, you name it. Just the right amount of chaos. At first it seemed odd, as if my body had been accustomed to the feeling. Long buried beneath forced patience and courteous smiles, a part of me was beginning to come to life. We started working. The dining area turned into a combat zone. A distinct menu with the name of a family member in bold marker was affixed to each chair. The Golden Dragon Thai menu was laminated and placed on Lorraine's chair. A huge dripping cheeseburger was featured on the cover of Griffin's Burger Restaurant menu. A posh vegan menu featuring gluten-free options scrolled across the top of Delala's chair. Under the crystal chandelier Lorraine insisted us purchase 3 years ago, at the center of the table. I put the decoration in place. It was a big glittering ball that I had stashed away. It was a relic from a Christmas when Mara had laughed and broken half the set. The last note I pinned in clear now had the ornament acting as a weight. Even the family cook's letters. "This year, don't let us down." When I saw those words, it used to hurt. It was fuel this time. Noel read it and laughed. "Clean, cold, flawless," he said. "Jonas, you're not showing off. The entire floor is being pulled out from under them by you." We set up the Ring camera as the finishing touch after taping the menus into place and arranging the receipts on the table like a reduced feast. I deliberately oriented it to catch the dining room as a whole. When they arrived, they found the menus, empty platters and hollow victories waiting for them over the stove, anticipating me. After that, we went to the kitchen. Noel assisted me in cleaning every surface till it was visible. I desired it to be pristine, vacant and unprepared. There was only stillness and counting, not a single pan on the stove, no tray in the oven and no smell of food. As Noel double-checked the delivery orders, I packed my little bag. The same 2-hour window was set aside for each eatery, which coincided with Lorraine and the others' expected arrival time. Belle's credit card was charged for dozens of dinners and dozens of perplexed delivery drivers, who were all requesting items from customers who had not placed any orders, at least not consciously. Along with the manila folder containing screenshots, emails, and texts, I also stuffed a printed copy of my most recent hospital bill inside my suitcase. The weight on my chest was finally releasing, which is why it felt lighter now. Not because the paper had changed. Belle shouted out from upstairs when I was zipping the bag. "Keep in mind that by the time they get there, Mom wants everything plated. Presentation is important." She spoke in a lovely poison voice. I grinned at the ground. I imagined it would be. Not quite how you had hoped. Before he took the automobile keys, Noel and I exchanged one final glance. Do you really think I shouldn't stay to witness the explosion? He made a joke. I gave a head shake. Fit simply the camera better. They always thought I would be there, quietly suffering. Give them a taste of what it was like to be left behind. With indifference rather than cruelty. The same lack of concern they displayed each time I dragged myself into that kitchen, half dead, half broken or bleeding. Just as Belle's automobile, which was crowded with Lorraine, Griffin, Delilah and Mara, turned the corner, we climbed into his car and drove away. All appropriately attired, giggling at something I didn't give a damn about. I didn't even look around. I simply leaned back in my chair, let out a calm breath, and opened the Ring app on my phone. I could see it clearly on the tiny screen. The family rushed inside, anticipating the sights of a golden bird, the scent of roasting meat, and the glow of a decorated tree in the corner. Rather, they discovered quiet, a dazzling ornament fastening down a note that seemed heavier than any meal I could have prepared, menus and receipts. Slowly they became confused. Lorraine strode to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and looked at the oven. Nothing. Delilah scowled as she took one of the menus. Mara's voice rose in bewilderment as she read the note out loud. Then, scowling more deeply, Griffin took out his phone. I saw the increasing fear on their faces as they perused the transaction trail. The start of a dozen restaurant calls, delivery men arriving one by one, arms full of boxes and bags, and a peaceful mess while drinking tea. When Belle's name appeared on my phone with call after call, I didn't even bat an eye. Let it ring, I said. Let them ponder. Allow them to sit there with the proof of their own privilege all around them. They were compelled to eat the bitter food they had been preparing for years without ever noticing. Leaning over, Noel checked the feed. Do you believe they've gotten it yet? Oh, they're just starting to taste it, he said, and I grinned. As I silenced the notifications, the hum of incoming calls persisted. And for the first time in a very long time, the silence was liberating rather than oppressive. The house looked almost too perfect. Every cushion was fluffed. Every surface gleamed under the soft glow of the Christmas lights Belle had insisted I put up earlier in the week, and I was just getting started. I had barely managed to climb a ladder, but somehow I had managed, and now it was almost laughable to look around. I made one final adjustment to the Ring camera, making sure it had a clear view of the dining room, because I wanted to capture every moment, the confusion, the anger, the unraveling, because all the work I had put into them over the years had taken me this long to realize that no matter how much I polished their world, it would never be enough. Noel sat at the kitchen counter, arms folded, watching me work. He didn't say much because he knew that this wasn't a time for jokes or motivational speeches, but rather for years of pushing myself until I bled, years of acting as though their approval was more important than my peace, and years of letting them see themselves clearly for once without me cushioning the fall. I picked up the last piece. The tiny holiday ornament glittering in the light, the same one that had once been part of a set Mara broke carelessly years ago. I ran my thumb over the rough edges and put it right in the center of the dining table, pinning the note down as if it were the most priceless gift in the world for the family cook. These years of swallowing my pride with every burnt roast and every forced smile around a table where I was treated like an employee are over. The way those words came back around felt almost poetic now. It wasn't a request, a directive or a warning. Next to the ornament was a manila folder filled with printed screenshots and medical bills. I kept it open just enough to be visible without being cluttered. So if Lorraine's hawk eyes didn't notice it as soon as she walked in, Delilah's inquisitive nature would. Menus were neatly taped to each seat, each tailored to the person who usually complained the loudest. Mara's vegan sushi flyer had glittery stickers on it, the same kind she used to slap all over her notebooks while making fun of my dull meals. And Griffin's menu from the burger place had an extra note attached. Extra grease, just how you like it. Noel whistled softly. Man, you didn't just set the table, he said. You set the whole stage. I nodded, but I wasn't smiling. This wasn't a time for gloating. This was closure. I looked at the clock. It was time to go.